My mother was monitoring the prices, my aunt was monitoring the flavors, and I was monitoring the sky to see if an alien could come take me away. I was back in Puerto Rico to visit my family of elders that were all going through an end of life crisis. It was my grandmother's 90th birthday, and she was looking at me with a strange anger and sadness that said, "My God, I'm 90. When the hell did I get here?" When it came to aging or illness, my family was tricky. They were the funniest people to take a cough way too seriously or treat a sinus infection as the beginning of the Plague. I always wondered why that was, especially because I could literally vomit my throat and say, "I'm fine, let's do brunch." Of course, COVID changed my tenacious bombacity when it came to common colds. I also want to clarify, I just invented that word. I love the word audacious. I love the word bombacious, bombacity. Is bombacious a word? I don't even know, but I'm loving it. I am my own thesaurus here. The bombacity. Okay, back to the story. My grandmother had reached a point of so many burials of friends, family, and dreams that life was just a giant look back at all you did and can't do anymore. The problem was I was feeling the same, and I hated that because it truly was my ego being a douche. Growing up with a sickly mom, her sadness was not over illness as much as genuinely living a life where she did not know health. In this world, we do not see that our very wellness and personality can be a privilege. I'm a resilient, fun person that invented the word bombacity and has the stamina of a horse, and some might say the running style. Yet those qualities are mine, not of others, and they are quite helpful, especially when you have a pack of old people aging into bitterness. My entire life, everyone acted like the happiest people to hold fear, resentment, envy, rage, and self pity. My father could be crying, fiending in a corner, and the minute a stranger passed by, he was in black and white and saying, "Howdy, neighbor," like a Leave It to Beaver episode. It fascinated me not as his daughter, because as her, it was super annoying. Yet as an actress, I wanted to understand his method. He was treating life like one giant quiet on the set moment, even with some hidden crimes. And I wanted to know how he was so good at feeling nothing that he could appear as if he felt it all. Yet what I did not realize is that my father was not the only one with this trick, despite being a master of it. We all wore masks to get by, and I felt like that Kafka quote: "Life is one giant Halloween party, and I forgot to bring a mask." At least I think that was him, or that's how it went. I don't know. I'm bombacious like that. Anyway, my grandmother's protective mask of being the pillar of elegant persistency and regal peace was slightly cracked. She was really old, and not like that old we make women if they are 25 and no longer sexually appealing to 50-year-old men. She was the old of a 50-year-old guy might be her grandson old. And for some reason, it was triggering a fear in her that I might have had since birth. What do I have to show for my life? Sometimes I wonder if heaven or the afterlife truly is a kindergarten display of all your lived highlights and triumphs and tragedies. God is your kindergarten teacher declaring you had a good week slash life, Katie, in front of a bunch of other kids and angels and marking you with a gold star. That, my grandma would get a gold star, I had no doubt. But I wondered if her sudden batch of negative, intrusive overthoughts stemmed from the same place as mine. I lived a life that God would approve, and my family as well. Even my dad would thank me for never taking a hammer to his head for all his abuse and just staying a good silent victim. He really benefited. Yet, did I like my life? Did I approve of it? Truthfully, not so much. And I did not even mean it in an ungrateful needs to read a self-help book kind of way. I meant it in a for all that I've survived, I've never lived kind of way. My grandmother was a survivor, and I inherited my dreamer self from her. Yet she never made a dream come true, and I had not either. I just did not want to be 90 to realize that, because being 30 and having that epiphany was already bombacious enough. We don't need more bombacities. All right, let's heal, let's discuss. So, my grandmother has never been a good sick person. And to be honest, my father wasn't either. My grandmother, they were the opposites, they were of the opposite spectrum. My grandmother was a saint that when she got sick became a demon. Like she was angry at every, she was not nice at all. Something about being sick just triggered all these pent up rages and sadnesses and fears that she was really good at holding together when she was healthy. And for the most part, she was always healthy. I mean, she's a four-time survivor cancer, a cancer survivor. Like she's had her bouts of poor health, but some of them didn't even hit her that hard, you know. Um, she's always been like she's 90, but she looks 50. Like we age well. And uh, my father was the opposite. He was a demon, and the minute he got sick, he became a saint. He suddenly was like, you know, I just want everyone to know I love you. Things happen. You know, like they were just opposites of the spectrum where my father was always causing harm, but when he got sick, he became like the quietest, most manageable human being that really wanted to be taken care of. Convenient, convenient. And my father and my grandmother was the opposite. And for some reason, this year, this birthday really hit her like an illness. Like she just realized, oh my God, I'm old. And I've lived more than I will live more, right? Um, and the years only revealed family secrets and your own machinations against yourself, your own self sabotage. And she's in this kind of elderly depression that I don't think we talk about a lot because I don't think we love the elderly enough. And when you think of old people, often you think of those politicians that don't know how to retire. But for the most part, we have a lot of elderly that are even working now because they can't afford retirement and they're living alone. And I just think my humanity, as I look at my own aging, my humanity has always been the same. I want love. I want to be loved, and it takes me a while to realize that all starts with self-love. And I felt really stricken by that because time, especially post pandemic, I don't know if this has happened for you, but I'm like, holy guacamole, like why is it all going so fast? Like no way, we're mid-October 2024. Like Christmas is here, 2025 is here, and I'm like still like going through my January resolutions of 2024. And I just felt so sad for her because I understood her fear, but I don't know the resolution. I mean, there's a Grammy winner, a lady who won Best New Artist at 86, a Latin Grammy winner. And, like, those are the goals. You never really do stop living. But I think, particularly for women, there is a feeling of we never start. I think that is very common in people with amidst oppressed communities, but also people of heavily traumatized backgrounds of like myself that suffered from real abuse, particularly from their parents, for my dad. Just this kind of when do I start living? When do I start growing up? When do I start getting the rewards for surviving? Because we were taught survival was the dream. Surviving is thriving. And you grow old enough to realize actually survival really is survival. And you look at uh, people like myself, anybody who's in their late 20s, early 30s, and then beyond that, because I've always been the one that had older friends. It's this kind of, we look on television and it's all people that are in their 20s or 30s that look like they're in their 20s playing kids in college and or like the kid who just entered the city and is making their dreams come true, and may be hard but they have a lot of luck, and for a lot of people that's just not their story and they don't get to see their story, and that inadvertently makes them feel like then there is no story to them. And I think that was my grandmother's existential crisis in a very quiet way that made me feel incredibly, incredibly bad and kind of ignited my own sense of urgency for peace and pushing forward. This kind of what is my story? What is my legend? What is my urban myth? Because the people that I loved died. She lost her best friend last year. And that woman was my mother, she was such a particular force, that woman. Very bougie, very thought she was the queen of the earth. And she got a horrible case of dementia, absolutely deteriorated within months. And It always stunned me, her ending, because of the contrast. Like, to be so indomitable, like so such a force, and then that plot twist. And then you have people like my dad that snort half the earth. And my father only got sober because he was sick. And people don't talk about that, and I have an upcoming episode about that there is this kind of Keith Richards perspective, or that crackhead that we all know in front of the bodega who looks like very healthy for being on crack at least 50 years. And then there's other people like my dad that they did have to pay the price. There's like people like Stevie Nicks who literally has a hole in her nose from snorting. And I think that my grandmother's aging, my father doesn't really think about how he's going to leave people because he's only in his head. So he likes children because children love you unconditionally. He has a harder time with adult children or adult people because they actually have a voice and a conscience, and they're like, huh, he stole money. I think that guy stole money from me. Um, I think for my grandmother, the question was, a lot of people that I love died, and a lot of people that claim to love me died to me. And when the people that are remaining die, what is my long lasting legacy? And will that even matter to me? What is the afterlife for me? And that's a very tricky question, I think, particularly for our family, because we grew up very Christian, very santero, very much involved in spiritual practices, Taino practices, on how to communicate with the dead and all that. And that stuff, I learned it, freaked me out, in part because we're all personalities. And the great funny thing about this world, and I'm learning through Daddy Recovery, is just what you're born into that doesn't necessarily reflect you, and how in time, for better or worse, you reflect it. And my grandmother and the women in my family were all raised to be survivors, particularly of men and the messiness that they are or could be, because not all men are messy. I'm trying to find the unmess. And now there's this, did I waste my life? Did I waste my time? And the problem with feeling that is we also were raised not to feel that. Don't go there. Don't open doors you can't close again. And it's left her a little bit in this quiet existential limbo that really everybody, check on your grandparents, check on your elders, check on them. If they're strangers and stranger neighbors, obviously go with a machete to make sure you're safe. Oh no, don't go with a machete. No, that's a bad idea. Okay, we're canceling this podcast. Anyway, long story short, check on people, no matter the age. And if you feel too old for your dreams, look back and ask yourself, what was always your excuse? Because maybe age is just a new excuse. My excuse was my family. My dad was just so cruel to me. And I couldn't go anywhere without hearing his cruelty in my head. And when he didn't apologize and continued his abuse, that ruptured me because I thought to myself, my dad is my abuser and he doesn't feel any remorse for ruining my life. And that's my story. And I started Daddy Recovery because that can't be my story. That can't be my story. I refute it. I rebuke it in the name of Jesus. And Christ compelled that story. And now I'm really trying to kind of have this moment of, who is Deandra? Who is Deandra, the survivor slash dreamer? Who is Deandra that could go into the past? Because I don't know. I'm studying Buddhism, and the past is valuable, but I believe in Stoicism. I love Stoicism. I would love to be more stoic. I believe it's valuable only if you turn it into a hero's arc. The story of somebody that always elevated and lived how they wanted and learned how to want to live. And that's what I want. And It's hard to send that message to somebody who's 90 and have pains and that are in every way physical, emotional, mental. Just hug people. Let yourself be hugged if you need it. Just love. Sometimes it's not an overthought. Just love. Love yourself through everything and love somebody or let somebody who's willing to love you love you. Just rest in that, even for a day. Because I think that's the anxiety. I think that's our anger. Was it all for love, in love? Is her life a love story, particularly a self love? And I could say honestly, mine is at best 50-50. We're trying to make it 100. So check out d'angereviewsitall.com for my reviews, daddyrecovery.com for my stories, and follow me on all the platforms that are attached because I have new music, I have new hopes, I have a new me, and I love you.